Greetings, brothers. This is Waymon Brown, creator of the EsquireProject.com, the self-enterprising site helping black men to eliminate barriers to personal achievement. Be sure, as always, to check out the links within the description. And if you feel inclined to donate towards the content, it is greatly appreciated. I'll be sure to leave the Cash App in the description and or comments. Salute to you all, and let's get into another topic. Some years back, I took a yoga class, and the instructor told the class that his yoga classes aren't really based on what most people would consider to be based in traditional yoga practices. Now, when he told me that, I felt a little bit ripped off because I purchased this package of classes for about $200, and I wanted to get the full effects of everything that I read about within books and saw in videos about the world of yoga. But then he went on to expound on his point, which was this. In traditional yoga, or Eastern yoga, the sort that I have been thinking about, practitioners quiet the mind before they work on the body. But in Western yoga, because of the culture that we're a part of, the body must become exhausted before the mind can be brought into submission. Now, when he told me that, I completely understood what he meant and realized how far away most of us were from using yoga in its more traditional sense, because almost all the people in the class would be getting off a very stressful day job with the weight of the world on their shoulders, or they were on their way to work, or they had all these other responsibilities that just put a big load on them. And the instructor wanted us to understand that in order to be receptive to the positive energy that can be attained through the mind being relaxed, we need to make sure that we first relaxed our bodies. And I kind of thought about how that reminds me of how sometimes if you're hungry, it might be better to go ahead and get yourself something to eat before you get into a real serious conversation with somebody, because your mind might be more focused on your hunger pains, and that can influence with the success of a conversation. You know, we take time to put thought into the words that we're going to use when we're talking to other people, because we don't want to be offensive to other people, or we don't want to cause a problem within a conversation. We don't really want to be careless because we understand the dangers that can come with saying things that you just can't take back. But one former business associate, he made a very striking comment to me one time when he talked about the investment that he was making into his state of mind in order to be successful in business. And what he said was, you know, if we talk to other people the way that we talk to ourselves, we would have had a falling out a long time ago with that person, and we would have never been able to patch things up. You know, it's so easy to beat ourselves up for moments in life where we wish that we can get a do-over. If only we would have said what we really wanted to say during an argument, or if only we would have been willing to deal with a physical confrontation when someone deserved to be dealt with in that way for crossing a line. If only we would have known better in certain situations and didn't allow ourselves to get taken advantage of. It's very important that, just like in Western yoga practices, that we start to quiet our mind, where we allow ourselves to go through the process of getting through the hurt and getting through the pain and the anger and the disappointments. And while we can fight within ourselves about our past mistakes and the things that we wish we can have a second shot at, we're really filling ourselves up with disempowering energy when we focus on that. And it's counterintuitive towards making progress in life. It's almost akin to drinking poison and expecting somebody else to get sick from it. You know, I'm oftentimes reminded of the bald eagle and how much the bald eagle is such a powerful reference for moving forward in life. Because when a bald eagle reaches its golden years, they have to make a tough decision. They can either keep the same body that they've had throughout all their years, or they can get rid of parts of it. You see, the wings of the bald eagle and the talons that the bald eagle has, they start to interfere with it because the talons can't grab prey like it used to. The wings are a bit too heavy for its frame. Even its beak becomes bent. And all this interferes with the eagle's ability to fly. And of course, we know that a flying eagle would need to be able to do so, because without it, they won't be able to survive. So this is a pivotal time for this eagle's life. And it's during this time that the eagle has to make a very tough decision. They can either die an early death, or they can move forward. So at this pivotal stage, the eagle goes to the top of a mountain for several months and they sit on a nest. And when they do decide that they want to move forward, the eagle goes through a painful process of knocking its beak against a rock until the beak breaks off. And then over time, they grow a new beak that's in good shape and that's proper for surviving in the wild. Then they have to pluck out its talons, which eventually end up growing back like fingernails grow. And again, now they have new talons that can grab prey. And then they must actually, once the talons grow back, pluck out the feathers. And then they have to await new feathers to grow back, but the feathers only come in one by one, incrementally. So imagine the sort of patience that the eagle must exercise. And then it's after this rebirthing that the eagle can actually extend its life for several decades, and they're noted to outlive any other species within its group. You see, this incremental regrowth of the eagle reminds me as well of how Japan resurrected its economy after World War II, where after severe loss, they decided that their best strategy for growing their economy would be to incrementally, part by part and piece by piece, each and every day, commit to improving each part of its manufacturing processes and business processes. And it worked because over time, we know as of today, Japan is known as a superpower, one of the world's dominant economies. And what they did is they adopted a principle called Kaizen, where they again made regular improvements to their processes in the pursuit of perfection. And when you think about how well that's fared for them, even within the automotive industry, it's gotten to a point where people who don't even know anything about cars can blindly have faith in brands like Toyota and brands like Honda because they're known for reliability. And that's because Japan has done such a phenomenal job at making their vehicles mechanically sound and building a reputation for reliability over the years. But notice just how Japan and the bald eagle had to go through some sort of a suffering of loss before the prosperity came. You see, it's difficult for us to deal with losses because during a loss, we resent ourselves well after the fact, well after these things are over with, because even though they're out of our control, they're still very real to us because we live with these things day by day. And sometimes it's hard for us to really difficult rather for us to realize that losses are part of a championship that might be lying right in front of us. And then other times we're upset over circumstances that we literally couldn't control, or things that we were born into, or situations that we just never signed up for. And even in those instances, the power of a championship lies right in front of us if we decide to acknowledge that even if it's not our fault, it's still our responsibility to deal with the situation that we're in. Truly, responsibility, responding to our ability to get past something, even if we didn't put ourselves in that position that we're in, is a remarkable trait. Even when you think about how babies are oftentimes born with HIV, it's not their fault. They got it from their parents. They weren't the one who was sharing the needle or who was being sexually irresponsible. They're born with a death sentence. And yet they still, as they mature, make it their responsibility to see to it that they raise awareness of how the virus spreads and the importance of being accountable towards yourself and towards other people. But the things that most of us deal with, they're not really like that, are they? Most of the times we're dealing with things that are a result of what we've allowed to be done to ourselves. So if true victims who never volunteered to be in certain situations can learn and grow and actually be a hero to others, can we not also learn, even if it's very tough, to let go of the times that we wish that we could have gotten back, where we dropped the ball and where we expected more from somebody else, but where we got let down? These are those apologies that we never received from someone who we thought was a friend. This is the closure that we never got from a former lover. These are the constant replays of the redemption that we wish that we could have gotten. And now we can only get back through our imagination, still disgruntled in knowing that it remains as a fantasy. You see, we keep replaying these different events over and over in our minds, even more vividly, each time letting them take us down a path of powerlessness. And we can't get these moments back. So we have a choice, just like the bald eagle has a choice, which is to break away from these things and to put all of this crap in the garbage right where it belongs. Because we recognize that it's been occupying way too much space in our head, draining our energy for way too much time, and it's too heavy on us to where it's starting to impede on our quality of life, and eventually it's going to be too heavy to where it even infringes upon our survival. So what we have to learn to do, brothers, is learn to welcome all experiences, because we know that eventually our experiences will end up serving as a mentor to us, because we can acquire wisdom from these things. And sometimes we might wish that we had a certain caliber of a person whom we know is very strong, who we know has a very strong mind, we know who's been through some stuff, and we just wish that we had access to them to pick their brain and to almost rely on them during hard times. But if we chose to become that person through gaining the wisdom from experiences, we won't ever have to worry about having that person around, because they'll always be around every hour of the day. You know, these days, when I even browse over some of my content, a lot of times I can actually listen to my own videos that I make and go back and read some of my own articles when I need to pick me up or when I need to refocus on certain things. Not because of haughtiness, but because I know that what I've documented and what I share is a journal to myself that I'm deciding to share with the brothers. You got to start bringing order to your mind if you want to try to do anything in this life that you get. And you have to do it by being a lot nicer to yourself, being more kind to yourself. You know, we've had this body that we've been in, these experiences that we've had. Think about it. We've been who we've been for a long time. You know, from our formation, from infancy, from our parents' house until now. And sometimes we don't give ourselves the credit of looking what we've been through and looking what we've overcome. When right now there's millions of people who would actually have called it quits on life a long time ago if they were dealing with some of the things that you deal with. And oftentimes you deal with these things by yourself when nobody even knows it. You need to start recognizing that you deserve to have good things happen for you. And just like I mentioned earlier with the things that we say to ourselves, you know, how would you really feel if you had a friend talking to you crazy about all the things that you haven't done and all the things that you're not doing, and, you know, how much of a failure that you are, and they never even apologize for it or even acknowledge the hurt that they caused by saying these things to you? Undoubtedly, you would have cut them off a long time ago. But yet, this is the sort of friend that we're being to ourselves. You ever look at one of your baby pictures And you think back to how small you were and how fragile you were and how much care that you must have needed back then. You know, I'm sure you would have given your parents no excuse if they would have let something happen to you. Right? Because you were a baby. Yet now you're that same person, but just matured. So even though you're not a baby anymore, you still have that same person to protect who's now all grown up. They deserve just as much protection and just as much care while not as fragile. And think about this. You're more valuable now than you were when you were an actual baby. Because you have experience now. Because you've made something of yourself now. You've had time to live. You're no longer dependent on your parents or anyone else to do anything for you. You're all on your own. And this is why I oftentimes think about that ancient proverbial saying of how the day of death is better than the day of one's birth. And while I know many people interpret scripture in different ways, and this isn't a Bible lesson, I oftentimes interpret that as meaning that when you die, you've had an opportunity to make a name for yourself from living a full life. And that's better than just being born where you don't have anything on your resume at that point. Brothers, who you are is good enough right now to build upon. But you got to start taking inventory of the good within you. You have to literally start telling yourself the good things about yourself each and every day throughout the day. I don't care if you have to think about it, write it down on index cards, paste it to the top of your forehead. You have to build up your self-image. Because if you don't, and you try to go out here and deal with this world, you'll let things happen to you over and over and over again that shouldn't happen to you. And that you'll have less respect for yourself now instead of your parents as a baby, but less respect for yourself because you're actually the one who's responsible for protecting yourself. But you also have to forgive yourself for times where you weren't the best protector. Just like you should also have the capacity to forgive your parents for not being the perfect parent. But you got to start taking inventory of your good, keeping track of it, and recognizing that you are basically a staple ingredient. And all you need is just a few extra things. Just like when you go to the store and you don't have a list and you may not be aware of what's in the cabinets and what's in the refrigerator, before you know it, you done bought up half the store. All this stuff that you didn't need, exerting a lot more of your resources on things that weren't even necessary because you didn't take inventory of what you already had. And had you just maybe added a few seasonings here and there, a couple different items here and there, you would have had enough to make some phenomenal recipes for a long time. Despite your errors, you should be so proud of yourself for whom you've become. My brothers, may wisdom be with you, and it's peace and love till next time.